Killamarsh was known to be this quiet little town in Derbyshire of England where the loudest noise you would hear on a Sunday morning would be birds chirping or someone out in their garden cutting their grass or possibly the sound of children laughing. However, on the 19th of September of 2021, that peaceful calm that this quiet little community had once known would be completely shattered by one of the most brutal and senseless acts of violence in recent British history. 4 lives had been taken, 2 of them just being 11 years old, another one being only 13, a mother, her children, and a little girl who was just there for a sleepover. All murdered by one man. We can't even call him a man because that is offensive to men. This was the same man that was deemed to be dangerous by authorities, but was also sent to live with this family anyway. This is the harrowing, devastating, bone-chilling case of the Killamarsh murders. Well, hello there beautiful people, how are we all doing? I hope you're doing well. You know I can't just enter without my usual spiel, so hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new here. I hope you're all doing so well. Welcome back to another true crime episode. If you are new here, hi, my name is Anna. I post true crime content every single Wednesday and Sunday. On Wednesdays, we just sit down, we chat, very much chill vibes. And then on a Sunday, we do true crime and makeups. Now, if true crime is your jam, I would highly suggest you subscribe, get the notification bell on, because I'm here for you every single week. And today we are covering a brutal, heartbreaking case. This is a case of the Killamarsh murders that would be committed by the monster Damien Bendall. A convicted violent offender, a known threat to women and children, and the scumbag loser who would commit murders so heinous, they would haunt the UK forever. But without any further rambling and any further ado, let's head on right in to the case of Damien Bendall. So, starting off where we always do, at the very beginning, who was Damien Bendall? Who was this POS? Well, let me tell you, Damien Bendall, he wasn't some kind of scary mystery figure that slipped through the cracks. This guy himself, he was the crack. Bendall was known to police, to probation officers, and also known for his long history of criminal violence well before these murders had even taken place. He was born around 1990, the exact date I'm not sure, and honestly I don't exactly care because this POS, I don't care if I get his facts right about his early life. I honestly do not care. He is the human form of evil. He deserves no respect from any of us. The only people who deserve respect in this case is the victims who tragically lost their lives. Public information related to his childhood and upbringing is practically non-existent. It's not publicised out there, so I'm not going to speculate. But what I can tell you as a fine fact about Damien Bendall is the fact that this scumbag, he was constantly popping up in criminal reports. His history of violence, his criminal record, was it long? So we can see there was a lot of petty crimes throughout the early thousands. And then on January the 7th of 2004, he would be reprimanded for criminal damage after he was throwing eggs at an older woman's house. Then on June the 30th of 2011, Bendall would be convicted of robbery of a lonely man in Swindon, and for this he would receive a 3-year sentence. Then moving on to 2012, back to business as usual for Bendall. This time it was attempted robbery with possession of a knife. And for this yet again, he would receive another 3-year sentence. But this still wouldn't be enough to deter this scumbag. Because then we have May the 10th of 2016. Bendall commits grievous bodily harm and 2 counts of assault on police officers because they would not allow him to transfer prisons. Don't you understand that when you're in prison it's because you've did wrong and you don't deserve special treatment. You can't just put in like wee special requests and demand that they get seen to. Then on May the 25th of 2016, Damien Bendall's ex-partner had actually contacted probation officers to alert them of the fact that within their relationship, there was a ton of domestic violence. On July the 5th of 2016, she calls up again. She discusses this domestic violence and she says that she feels like she needs some sort of protection put in place. She is terrified for her life. She is terrified of this evil scumbag. And on July the 12th, she has to call again because no one was helping her. No one was doing enough to protect her against this monster. December the 20th, 2016, he would be released on licence. December 21st, the next bloody day, 2016, he would be recalled to prison. This man can't even follow the law for one goddamn day. On January the 29th of 2017, he would be sentenced to an additional 30 months in prison for the attacks on the police officers. October the 31st, 2018, he would be released on licence. November the 28th, 2018, he would be recalled back to prison. We got a bit longer out of him this time. He lasted all 28 days following the law. That must have been so difficult for him. But honestly, I doubt he was actually following the law. He was probably just doing things undetected. On June the 27th of 2019, he would be refused release from prison, and honestly, they should have kept it that way, but they didn't. Then on August the 9th of 2019, he would be released from prison at the end of his sentence, but no post-release supervision was possible. Now this one I've got wrote down because I kept getting tongue-tied when I was trying to say it, so I'd rather not mess it up. So March the 17th of 2020, Wiltshire Police's Child Sexual Exploitation Team contacts probation to confirm Bendall's last known address and say they held evidence of sexual risk of harm to girls. Young girls. And these are so important when we go forward in this case. And then when we come to May the 9th of 2020, this lowlife, he was still offending. Nothing could deter him. No prison time that you could threaten him with would put him off his love for crime. Because Damien Bendall, he would be convicted of arson, and this was under the influence of cannabis and alcohol. Now, instead of receiving an actual prison sentence for this, he would receive a 17-month suspended sentence. Now, a suspended sentence is a term of imprisonment where the offender doesn't have to go to prison straight away, but they do have certain conditions that they have to meet to remain within the community. And do we think Damien Bendall is going to be able to follow those conditions? No. The conditions in this case was pretty simple. Damien Bendall obviously had to stay out of trouble, but he also had to live at a designated address. This address? 22 Chandos Crescent, the home of Terri Harris, Lacey Bennett and John Paul Bennett. Terri Harris would be Bendall's partner at this moment in time, and the two children would be Terri's children from her previous relationship. Now at this point in the case, Terri Harris is only 35 years old. She was a devoted mother of two, soon to be 3, because Terri at this moment in time, she was 14 weeks pregnant. Terri was so devoted to caring for her children and family. It was something she was so passionate about, and she decided she wanted to do this as a career, and so she became a care worker. Terri was known within her social life and her work life as being so kind with the bubbliest personality. Terri's mum had said that Terri was the most loveliest, bubbliest person you could ever meet, and that she was the kind of person that would do anything for anyone. Her life was dedicated to her children. She wanted to give them the happiest life she possibly could. She was so excited that her family was going to be expanding further, that she would have another child to look after and nurture and love. And just 2 days before her life was stolen from her, she had contacted one of her best friends and even told them, "We have some good news for you." And this news, of course, was the fact that she was pregnant again. Everyone around Terri said that she was the greatest mum. She was the blueprint for the greatest mum. Everything she did was for her children. She would do anything she had to ensure they had a lovely future, that they got to do things that every other child was getting to do. She worked so hard to provide for them. Now, Terri, she had moved to Killamarsh in 2020. The reason that she had did this was so she could be a lot closer to her mum. She didn't like living away from her mum because they were so close. She wanted to spend a lot more time with her. Now, she had soon met Damien Bendall on a dating app. The pair, they start talking, they have things in common, or, at least Damien Bendall lies about himself, makes himself seem like the perfect guy when actually he's just a complete piece of crap, but anything to get his foot in the door. They were dating that same year, and very soon after Terri had moved into her home in Killamarsh, Damien Bendall was right in the door behind her. He moved in very quick. And then we have Terri's son, 13-year-old John Paul Bennett. John Paul's father, Jason Bennett, he had described John as being his mini-me. They were so similar in how they looked, but also how they acted. Their personalities were almost like they were brothers, just, like 30 years apart. John Paul was quiet, he was thoughtful, he was caring. And although he was quiet, to those closest to him, he also had this very lively side. He was described as being very fiery, very passionate, and so incredibly funny. He would put on a front and he would have this tough exterior that he would show the world. But behind closed doors, he was so much more than that. He was the most loving son and protective big brother that anyone could ever wish for. And I do apologise because my eyes are watering. It's just talking about this family, talking about the children, what they are like, what their personalities were like, the kind of lives that were stolen from this world. It's heartbreaking. And you're going to see as we go on, because in my mind I know this case and I know what happens to these beautiful people. And that's why it is so hard to talk about them in their life and, how amazing they were when I'm sitting here and I know the outcome. Now, as a teenager, being 13 years old, he could play like the cool boy, always wanting to be with his friends and just spend time with them. He could, say, oh, I don't want to spend time with my sister or my family. But that wasn't him. He wanted to be around his family all the time. He loved his little sister and they were so close. And in fact, he would constantly look out for Lacey. He wanted to protect her. He wanted to play that typical big brother role. In his eyes, it was his job to keep Lacey safe. He was just a young boy with a kind and gentle heart. And then we have Lacey Bennett, who was only 11 years old at the time of her murder. Lacey, she was known in her family as the TikTok queen. She was outgoing, she was theatrical, she loved to sing and dance and just perform for everyone. Her father Jason had said that she would constantly make up dances and do little performances for people, and she would love learning the TikTok dances as well. 2020, that was sort of the year of TikTok dances, wasn't it? Not only this, but 11-year-old Lacey, she also had a very soft spot for the football player Jack Grealish. She was a bright and affectionate child and she just bonded so much with her older brother. And Jason had said that although as a pair they were really quite different, they would always come together, full of love and admiration for each other, always looking out for each other's best interests. The last victim in this case is 11-year-old Connie Gent. Now, this was Lacey's best friend. Connie was staying over this weekend. She was meant to just stay on the Friday, but the girls, Lacey and Connie, they were just having so much fun. They weren't ready for it to end yet, and so they asked Connie's mum, can we extend it just another night? Can Connie maybe stay for the Saturday as well? And her parents agreed because they were having so much fun. They just wanted Connie to enjoy herself, enjoy being with her friend. This night should have been a night filled with fun and happiness, making memories for these girls. And it would just be the complete opposite. Connie Gent, she was described by those around her as being the most kind, affectionate little friend that anyone could ever have. She was the type of friend that the minute you bring her into the house, she very quickly becomes a member of the family. Her father, Charlie Gent, he had described Connie as being his little sidekick and also his shining star. Connie had a very vivid imagination. She was very much like Lacey in the sense that she loved to sing and dance and put on performances for everyone to watch. She was always ready to put on a show, and she would light up every single room that she walked into. I could just imagine Connie and Lacey running riot, doing their songs, doing their dances. I can only imagine how much fun they must have had together. Now, a bit more regarding Terri, because before Terri had started dating Bendall, she was described by her mother as being a bit of a tomboy, and how she acted and also how she dressed, that was just her vibe. It was tomboyish, it was cool. But when she started to date Bendall, this very quickly changed. Terri started wearing low-cut tops, she was wearing really short skirts, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it wasn't Terri. She didn't look comfortable in that sort of thing. And not only that, but she had dyed her hair bright red when she had never cared about anything like that before. And Terri's mother had said that Bendall would almost parade her around as something for other people to look at. It was almost like Terri was his trophy. And don't get me wrong, Bendall was punching way above his weight with Terri. Terri was a gorgeous, beautiful woman inside and out. This guy, this cretin, don't know what's going on with his face, but his best achievement in his life was having a woman like Terri on his arm. Not only this, but Terri had been so lively and loud before, and now she was quiet, she was reserved, she was a complete shell of herself. Almost like someone had told her not to act how she usually does. And Terri's family did state that at first Bendall appeared charming, he seemed nice, he seemed like a great match for Terri, but they very quickly realised that this whole thing was a complete show. This man was not who he made himself out to be. At first they thought it was really nice that Bendall was so attached to Terri and constantly wanted to be around her. But then they started to realise Terri was never ever on her own anymore. She couldn't just go and visit her mum by herself. Bendall was always by her side, and any time this man was by her side, she was very quiet and she'd never said too much. So it wasn't that he couldn't keep away from Terri out of love and affection and lust. It was that he didn't want Terri out of his sight. Because what might she say? What might she reveal about this relationship and about him? Family quickly start to realise that this man that Terri has in her life, he's not charming. He's in fact just a master manipulator. He's controlling, he's aggressive, he's possessive, and he seemed dangerous. Terri's mother was so concerned at one point that she even considered using the domestic violence disclosure scheme, which is known as Clare's Law. This scheme allows people to find out from the police if the partner they're involved with has any history of domestic violence or abuse. And Terri's mum wanted to do this. She wanted to check. She knew something wasn't quite right. But she was terrified that what if she goes and uses a scheme and then the response is sent to Terri, which winds up being intercepted by Bendall? Would that put her in more danger? Would it endanger the children? Terri's mother just couldn't take that risk. And let's be very, very, very clear here. This was a man with an extensive record of violence. His name had already been flagged for domestic abuse, child exploitation, and drug-fueled aggression. But when it had come to the probation services assessing him, working out what his risk level was to the community, to a woman and her children, they assessed him as low risk. I don't want to get angry, but I'm already pretty angry because what do you mean that this guy with so many criminal convictions for things against women, against children, with drug use, what do you mean to tell me that he is low risk when he is a repeat offender of all of the above? And if the services haven't already let this family down enough at this very point, something even more chilling would happen before the murders. During a routine electronic monitoring checkup, Damien Bendall, he had unpromptedly disclosed a horrifying comment to the probation services. He stated, "If this relationship goes bad, I will murder my girlfriend and the children." This officer has heard the comment this monster made, and he never escalated it. No safeguarding check, no police referral, nothing. How the hell does someone with his history say that if his relationship goes bad, he's going to kill his girlfriend and the children? How does he say that to an officer? And the officer doesn't think, oh, I better note this, I better tell someone, I better demand that better care is put in place for this family. Actually, I better demand that this man be removed from this home with the women and children. But no, nothing would be done. Do you know there would be 51 system failures recorded after these murders? 51. How the hell do 51 system failures occur? 1 or 2 failures, we could maybe understand. I mean, no really, because people should be doing their jobs thoroughly enough in these cases when they're up against horrific monsters. But 51? Like, I'm sorry, did you get your qualifications and your job on the back of a cereal box? Do you actually work here, or did you just sneak in the building one day and try to do the work? Because 51 separate failings is completely diabolical. The probation services just didn't assess Bendall properly. Whether this was laziness or an oversight on their part, I don't care. There is no excuse. They never spoke to Terri, they never checked in on the children, and despite a very clear history of violence against women, against children, nothing was done. He was approved to go and live in this home, and they never provided a single warning to Terri. This young woman had no idea what she was up against. Terri, Lacey and John, they never knew how dangerous this man could be, and they weren't protected whatsoever. And a huge shame on every single person that was involved in this, that released him to this family, that assessed him incorrectly, that never escalated comments that he had made, who never checked in on Terri, who never checked in the children. Every single person involved, shame on you. And I know I'm being harsh, okay? I know I'm being harsh, and I can't help it. I'm too passionate about this sort of stuff, and this is such a huge failing. There's not even a word strong enough to describe just how big a failing this was. So now we're on the evening of September the 18th of 2021. This would be the night that the horrific murders would occur. 11-year-old Lacey Bennett, she is hosting a sleepover with her best friend, also 11-year-old Connie Gent. Now they're hosting this at 22 Chandos Crescent, which is the home of Terri, Lacey, John and Damien Bendall, who I really want to call Damien Bell. It was a full house this night. Everyone was there. Terri, John Paul, Lacey, Damien Bendall and Connie. And what triggered this monster this night, we might never know. And there is no situation that could ever excuse what this evil cretin would go on to do. All we know for sure in this case is that in the late hours of September the 18th and the early hours of September the 19th, Damien Bendall would commit some of the most brutal, evil and sadistic murders that the UK will ever see. During the day on September the 18th, Connie, Lacey and John Paul, they had actually been out on the streets. They were selling sweets for cancer research. They were trying to raise a bit of money. Now Terri had told them, be home 8 PM at the very, very latest. I want to make sure that you're all in, you're all safe, all the children are accounted for, and then we can just have a really nice night. Whilst Terri is looking after these children, making sure that they're safe, Damien Bendall, He's got other plans. He has other important things that he is seeing to. The main one being at 7:50 PM, he was contacting his drug dealer because he needs cocaine. Cocaine with the kids around. Yep, great adulting, great adult responsibility being shown right there. Not only was he trying to get cocaine for himself, but he was also trying to get cocaine to sell. So whilst he's on trying to get the dealer, he's also on trying to get his clients to want to buy the cocaine that he's hoping to get from the dealer. But no before he snorts some of it himself. From 8 PM, the children would be inside the house. They were settling down, winding down for the evening. Just after 9 PM, Connie Gent's mother had sent her a WhatsApp message, and this WhatsApp message was saying goodnight to her daughter. Connie very quickly responded back, saying goodnight to her mum. Both of them not knowing this would be the last message they would ever exchange. And it was the last time they would get to say goodnight to each other. John Paul, he had been texting his father, Jason Bennett. He was telling him about a present that he wanted for Christmas. You know, got to get your requests in early. And he was just texting away about this gift that he wanted, chatting away with his dad. His last message would be sent around 9:42 PM that evening. It was sent to Terri, and this was telling Terri that he was going to head in the shower before going to bed. And it would be shortly after this message was sent that these brutal murders would occur. Bendall would grab a claw hammer and he had his sights set on every single person in that home that very evening. He would go room to room, brutally murdering each individual. It is believed that the first victim of Bendall's had been Terri. It's believed that he had took her out first, because if he had went for the children first and Terri realised, she might have been able to stop him. So Bendall, he takes his claw hammer, he goes into their bedroom where Terri's sitting, and he just starts attacking her around the head with this claw hammer, killing her. After murdering Terri, he then goes to the bathroom where John Paul was just finishing up in his shower. He went in and he would strike John Paul across the head multiple times across his upper body, and John Paul would fall to the bathroom floor and bleed out everywhere. 11-year-old Connie Gent had been targeted next by Bendall, this gorgeous, beautiful little girl who was just having a sleepover at her best friend's house. Connie would also be struck multiple times in the head and upper body, ultimately leading to her death. The final victim in this case would be 11-year-old Lacey Bennett, and I apologise in advance for how devastating this part is going to be to hear. I'm going to keep it short, I'm going to keep it brief, because we don't need to go into any other detail. Lacey had been struck in the head with this very same claw hammer. She was struck multiple times, but she would be alive, barely, but alive, anywhere between 30 to 60 minutes after this attack. During this 30 to 60 minutes, Damien Bendall, this vicious evil spawn of Satan, he had taken a mirror, he had propped it up in front of him and Lacey, and he raped this 11-year-old girl while she was bleeding to death. And not just once, but twice. This little girl is dying, and he is raping her while she is succumbing to her injuries. This is a creature so evil, I don't even believe the devil would accept him. After these brutal murders have taken place, this idiotic, loser, weirdo, vile monstrosity, cretin of a man, his only concern at this point was contacting his drug dealer, still trying to get cocaine. Around 6 AM, Damien Bendall, he had left the home with John Paul's Xbox. He got a taxi into Sheffield, and he had sold John Paul's Xbox for crack cocaine. There is no remorse, there is no regret. This creature could not give a single about what he's done. So he returns later this morning, he then calls his mother, they're chatting on the phone for a little bit, and he tells his mother that he stabbed himself. Not deep enough, because he was still alive and kicking. Once this call ends, he goes to the shop to get himself tobacco, so obviously the damage was literally none. And whilst he was going to the shop to get tobacco, his mother was making a phone call to the police saying, "My son's just phoned me and told me that he stabbed himself, can you please go over and check on him?" And not only this, but Damien Bendall, he would call the police on himself, and he simply stated, "I killed 4 people." He then made his way outside of the home, where he would wait for the police officers to arrive. Once the police arrive, they are speaking to Bendall outside the home, and he just very calmly states to them, "I've killed 4 people. I'm going back to prison." Yeah, but, hopefully, also the fiery pits of hell. Police at first, they are just thinking, this is some idiotic weirdo that's just out his face, doesn't know what he's saying, this can't be true. But when they go in the house to double check, to investigate, they very quickly realise that this monster, he was telling the truth.
I don't know what happened.
Alright, come to me.
Right, cool.
Mate, have you got anything on you that you shouldn't have?
No, there's no weapons or nothing.
Right.
Right, do you just want to undo your coat? Have you armed yourself?
Yeah.
You have?
Have you stabbed yourself, mate?
I can see blood on your hands.
Yeah.
Anywhere else?
Just my chest, 4 inches in with a bread knife.
Can we have a look?
Yeah, and one on the stomach. I bled quite.
Right, do you want to
Yeah. Can we go down
No, just stay there.
I just don't want to be in front of everyone.
Alright, just round the corner.
Just walking wounded at the minute.
Alright, stand here. Stay here.
Right,
So,
we're told, I know what's going to happen to you now, mate.
Well, I know it's going to happen
We just-
when we go to prison, obviously, but again.
Why, what have you done? Have you done something to anyone else?
Yeah.
What have you done?
Murdered 4 people.
07:47 hours. I'm arresting you on suspicion of murder. You don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence. Do not mention when questioned something later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Your arrest is necessary to protect you from harm, to prevent your disappearance, for a prompt and effective investigation. Okay? We're going to get you up, we're going to put you in the back of the van. Stand up.
John Paul would be found first. He was lying naked on the bathroom floor. Then the officer discovered Terri and Lacey. They were in the main bedroom, which would have been Terri and Damien's bedroom. Lacey was on the bed and Terri was on the floor. Evidence had indicated that Bendall had actually attacked and raped Lacey once downstairs. He then carried her up the stairs to the main bedroom, where he raped her again. It was also stated that he had used some sort of ligature around Lacey's neck during this rape, and when he was tightening it, this had actually contributed to her death alongside her head injuries. Connie Gent's body would then be discovered in a separate bedroom. Damien Bendall was then arrested under the suspicion of murdering 4 people. I don't know what we're suspicious about because quite clearly it's a slam dunk. But first he had to be taken to the hospital to be treated for his injuries, which were so pathetic that they barely scratched the surface and only required a couple of stitches. When he was taken to the station to be interviewed, he had stated to the police, "I used a hammer. I did not realise what I did until I walked into my room and saw my missus and my daughter." Let me just, number one, shut the up, right? Stop with the lies. You quite clearly remember what you did. Don't try and say you blacked out because we're not doing that. And number 2, Lacey is not your daughter. Don't you dare refer to that little girl as your daughter. Jason Bennett is her father, not you. He then also said to police, "Bet you don't usually get 4 murders in Killamarsh, do you?" "Well, I mean 5 because my missus was having a baby." Now, during the sentencing hearing, the CPS had made representations that a whole life tariff was absolutely necessary. I mean, personally, I think a no life tariff, would be more necessary, but, you know, I don't make the rules, sadly. Bendall had previously pled guilty to 4 counts of manslaughter, but denied the murder and rape. Make that make sense? Doesn't. Meaning that he was due to stand trial for these offences before he changed his plea. Bendall's defence, they put forward theories that Bendall was psychologically impaired at the time of the murders. And the CPS, they weren't having it. They had their own medical expert assess the situation and they said, "No, these arguments have 0 merit. You weren't psychologically impaired. You are just evil." And when all of these medical angles that his defence was going for had been exhausted, the evidence that he had murdered all 4 of these people without any impairment to his judgment was overwhelming. And he had no other option than to admit to all the charges. On December the 21st of 2022, Bendall would be sentenced by Mr. Justice Sweeney to a whole life prison term. But there is no prison sentence, there is no sentence that exists that could ever provide justice for murders so evil. On July the 1st of 2023, number 22 Chandos Crescent would actually be demolished. No one wanted the reminders of what took place in that house and the horrifying acts of murder and abuse that was committed against this family. This case is just such a huge failing of the very system that is supposed to protect the public from people like Bendall. This was a system that allowed a violent, high-risk, repeat offender into a home with children. The same system that had ignored a threat to kill. A system that had failed to look through his entire criminal history. And a system that allowed this monster to go and live with a woman and her 2 children without ever checking in on them. Remember, 51 separate failings were identified after the fact. And that's the final tragedy. Terri, John, Lacey and Connie, they didn't just fall through the cracks. They were pushed through them by a system that is far too broken to even care. As always, before I close out this case, bring it right back to the victims, Terri, John, Lacey and Connie. There is no words that I could ever say that would bring any comfort to their family, to their friends, to everyone who loves them, to that entire community. But I am truly sorry for your loss, and I can't imagine what it's been like for you to live through these losses. I hope that every single one of you have the support that you need, the people around you that you need to help you through. And I hope in time some form of healing can come from this. I'm so sorry that your family was failed so atrociously that it resulted in these deaths. I am sending love, strength and prayer to every single one of you, and please, 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 to everyone who is watching this video today, please remember their names, remember their faces, remember their story, and remember them for who they were. They were so much more than this case, so much more than these murders. They were lovely, beautiful human beings with their whole lives ahead of them. Terri was a devoted mother who would have given her life for her children. These children all had bright futures, they had ambitions, they had dreams that they will never get to live out, because of a monster and creature and cretin like Damien Bendall. But my loves, that is it for another true crime episode. I know this one was tough, I know it was hard to get through, but yet again, this is why it's so important that we cover these cases. We need to be aware of the system and how it fails. We need to do what we can to protect other people, to protect ourselves, and do everything possible to make sure other people aren't put in the same position as this family. And if you yourself have any safety concerns, you think you might be with someone who has a history of domestic violence, someone who could possibly put you in danger, I am leaving resources in the description below. Please, please, please utilise them if you need to. It is always better to be safe than sorry. It is always better to offend than to wait and see what happens. I love every single one of you too much for anything bad to happen to you, so please, please, please be vigilant and do whatever you can to keep yourself safe and keep your loved ones safe. But that is it for today. Please, please, please remember, be a good person, do not be a bad person, stay safe, look after each other, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!